In today's episode, we're diving into 3 stories where the hunters became the hunted, nature striking back with brutal, unforgiving force. From a lion hunt that turned into a hyena ambush and a chase through the Amazon that ended with a silent stalker delivering one fatal perfect strike. But first, we begin in the frozen wilderness of Alaska, where a group of hunters believed they had dropped a giant grizzly. The Alaskan wilderness in late October is a place of stark contrasts. Pristine snow blankets the landscape in deceptive tranquility, while beneath this serene surface, life and death play out in brutal, unforgiving terms. For apex predators like the grizzly bear, these early winter months trigger a desperate race against time, a final push to accumulate enough fat reserves before hibernation. But what none of them could have foreseen was how this hunt would end. Not with a clean kill, but a blood-soaked warning from nature itself. For 3 experienced hunters from Anchorage, this harsh reality was precisely what drew them to the remote Talkeetna Mountains, 180 miles north of civilization. James Whitaker, 42, his brother Michael, 38, and their longtime hunting partner Robert Callahan, 45, had been tracking game in Alaska's backcountry for over 2 decades. They were well-equipped, well-trained, and well aware of the dangers that lurked in these mountains. Their target was a massive male grizzly that local guides had nicknamed the Ghost, a 900-pound behemoth that had developed a reputation for raiding cabins and killing livestock on the outskirts of smaller settlements. The bear's territory spanned over 400 square miles, making him notoriously difficult to locate. The hunting party had secured one of the few permits issued annually for grizzly hunting, justified by the bear's increasingly bold encounters with humans. Still, no one truly knew what the Ghost was capable of, not until it was far too late. On the morning of October 23, 2019, the 3rd day of their expedition, fresh snowfall provided the break they had been waiting for. Clear tracks, massive even by grizzly standards, led them deep into a ravine flanked by dense pine forest. The men moved with practiced precision, their breath forming clouds in the frigid air as they followed the unmistakable trail. At 11:42 a.m., Robert spotted movement approximately 200 yards ahead, a dark shape against the snow partially obscured by underbrush. Through his scope, James confirmed it was their target. The massive grizzly was digging at the base of a fallen tree, likely searching for hibernating rodents or cached food. The hunters positioned themselves strategically, forming a loose triangle with clear lines of sight. James, the most experienced marksman, took the lead position. At 175 yards, he steadied his .338 Winchester Magnum rifle against a tree trunk, exhaled slowly, and squeezed the trigger. The shot echoed through the valley. The bear roared, a primal sound that seemed to shake the air, and reared up on its hind legs, towering nearly 10 feet tall. James fired again, striking the bear in the shoulder. Michael and Robert joined in, their rifles cracking in quick succession. The grizzly absorbed 5 more rounds, staggering but somehow remaining upright, before a final shot from James sent the massive creature crashing to the ground. The hunters waited the standard 30 minutes before approaching a downed predator, a safety protocol that had served them well over the years of hunting dangerous game. The half hour passed with tense vigilance, their rifles trained on the motionless form partially hidden in the underbrush. No movement, no sound except the whisper of wind through the pine branches and the occasional distant calls of ravens. At 12:25 p.m., the men began their cautious approach. The snow around the fallen bear was stained crimson, spreading outward in a stark contrast against the pristine white. As they closed to within 50 yards, they made a critical decision that would prove fatal. To cover more ground and approach from multiple angles, standard procedure when confirming a kill of this magnitude, they separated. James moved directly toward the bear's position while Michael circled to the right and Robert to the left, maintaining a distance of about 30 yards between them. The ravine's topography meant they quickly lost sight of each other as they navigated the uneven terrain. James reached the bear first. The massive grizzly lay on its side, partially concealed by a tangle of fallen branches and underbrush. From his position, James could see the animal's head and upper body, motionless in the blood-stained snow. He approached to within 15 feet, his rifle raised, senses heightened by the proximity to such a formidable predator, even one that appeared dead. What happened next occurred with such explosive violence that Michael and Robert, just 30 yards away, had no time to react. The dead bear, its body temperature dropping, blood pooling beneath it, 8 rifle rounds in its massive frame, surged upward in one final adrenaline-fueled attack. 900 pounds of muscle, fur, and fury erupted from the underbrush. The Grizzly covered the 15 feet separating it from James in less than a second. Before the hunter could raise his rifle, before he could even cry out in warning to his companions, the bear was upon him. The bear wasn't done yet, and James was standing exactly where it needed him to be. The sound that reached Michael and Robert wasn't a scream, there hadn't been time for that. It was the sickening combination of a roar, a crunch, and the wet tearing of fabric and flesh. They sprinted toward the commotion, rifles raised, shouting James's name. By the time they reached the clearing, the violence had already ended. The bear lay collapsed across James's lower body, both predator and prey motionless in the crimson-stained snow. The hunter's rifle lay 5 feet away, unfired. His face and throat were unrecognizable, the bear's massive jaws having crushed his skull in one catastrophic bite. Death had been instantaneous, a small mercy in an otherwise merciless end. The Grizzly, too, was finally irrefutably dead. Its last act of vengeance had depleted whatever reserves of strength and will had kept it alive after absorbing 8 rifle rounds, any one of which would eventually have proven fatal. The Alaska Department of Fish and Game investigation that followed revealed the extraordinary circumstances of the attack. The bear had sustained catastrophic internal injuries from the multiple rifle rounds. Its lungs were shredded, its liver ruptured, and 2 bullets had penetrated its heart. By all physiological measures, the animal should have died instantly from such trauma. Yet somehow, through some combination of adrenaline, primal instinct, and the remarkable physical resilience that makes grizzlies among the most formidable predators on Earth, the bear had remained conscious and capable of one final devastating attack. The autopsy revealed another detail that added a grim footnote to the tragedy. The grizzly had been suffering from an impacted tooth that had developed a severe infection, likely causing significant pain and potentially explaining its increasingly aggressive behavior towards humans in recent months. The bear had been dying slowly even before the hunter's bullets found their mark. Today, in the Alaskan Hunting Safety Training Program, the case of James Whitaker serves as a sobering reminder of the unforgiving nature of wilderness predators. Instructors emphasize the 30-30-30 rule. Wait 30 minutes after a predator appears down, approach no closer than 30 feet initially, and never separate from hunting partners by more than 30 yards when confirming a kill. In the remote corner of the Talkeetna Mountains where James fell, a simple stone marker now stands. Hunters who pass by often leave a rifle cartridge or touch the stone for luck. It marks the spot where hunter and hunted both experienced their terrifying final affliction, a place where nature demonstrated that even in its dying moments, the wild remains untamed, unpredictable, and ultimately sovereign. But while that attack happened under open skies, the next one unfolded in total darkness, inside a cave where a hunter thought he had cornered his trophy, but instead walked straight into something far worse. The Namibian savanna in August is a study in harsh contrasts. Scorching days give way to frigid nights. Lush oases punctuate vast stretches of arid wasteland. Life and death play out in brutal, unforgiving terms beneath an indifferent sky. For the animals that call this unforgiving landscape home, survival means adapting to these extremes. For humans who venture here seeking trophies, it means respecting them. But some hunters don't learn that lesson until it's far too late. Victor Reinhardt had never been one for respect. At 52, the German-born real estate magnate had built a reputation in big game hunting circles as a man who pushed boundaries. His sprawling estate in Bavaria featured a trophy room with over 70 mounted heads, including all of Africa's Big Five. His social media accounts boasted hundreds of thousands of followers who devoured his graphic hunting photos and boastful captions. What his online admirers didn't see were the corners cut, the rules bent, the ethics compromised in pursuit of his trophies. And in Namibia, those compromises would come back for him with claws and teeth. On August 17, 2022, Reinhardt arrived at a private hunting concession in Namibia's remote Kunini region. He had paid $85,000 for the opportunity to hunt a male lion, a guaranteed kill, as the less reputable outfitters sometimes quietly promise their wealthy clients. His guide, Tobias Nkosi, was a 38-year-old veteran tracker with 20 years of experience leading hunts across southern Africa. Nkosi had reservations about Reinhardt from the moment they met. The German's custom rifle, a .375 H&H Magnum with gold inlays and ivory grip, was immaculate. But his eyes held something Nkosi had seen before in certain clients. Not the respectful caution of a hunter, but the gleeful anticipation of a killer. For 3 days, they tracked a magnificent black-maned lion across the savannah. The animal was estimated to be around 9 years old, past his breeding prime, and therefore approved for hunting under Namibian conservation laws. On the morning of the 4th day, they spotted him resting beneath an acacia tree approximately 200 yards away. What happened next would later be pieced together from Nkosi's testimony, Reinhardt's recovered equipment, and forensic evidence. The German insisted on taking the shot despite the lion's position, partially obscured by brush and at a problematic angle. Nkosi advised waiting for a cleaner opportunity, but Reinhardt was impatient. He fired. It wasn't the clean kill he wanted, but it would be the last shot he ever took. The shot struck the lion but missed vital organs. The wounded animal roared and bolted into the brush, leaving a blood trail across the savannah. Proper protocol dictated waiting at least an hour before tracking a wounded lion, allowing time for the animal to weaken or die rather than following it while it's still strong enough to attack. Reinhardt insisted they pursue immediately. He wanted footage of the dying lion for his social media channels. The blood trail led them 5 miles across increasingly rocky terrain away from the open savanna and into a labyrinth of stone outcroppings and narrow ravines. By mid-afternoon, they reached a series of low cliffs where the blood disappeared into the mouth of a cave, a dark opening approximately 4 feet high and 6 feet wide. Nkosi immediately recognized the danger. Cave systems in this region were known to harbor multiple predator species, particularly during the heat of the day. The wounded lion had likely sought shelter in the darkness, making it exponentially more dangerous. He firmly advised retreating, regrouping, and returning with additional trackers and proper lighting equipment. Reinhardt refused. The light was perfect now, he argued. The dramatic setting of a cave would make for an exceptional trophy photo, something his followers hadn't seen before. He activated the camera mounted to his hunting helmet, checked his rifle, and switched on a small tactical flashlight. Despite Nkosi's increasingly urgent warnings, Reinhardt ducked into the cave entrance alone. The temperature dropped immediately as he moved from the 95-degree heat of the savannah into the cold darkness of the cave. The coppery smell of blood mingled with another odor, the unmistakable musk of predators and the sickly sweet scent of decay. His flashlight beam caught glimpses of bones scattered across the cave floor, antelope and zebra mostly, but also the unmistakable elongated skull of a cheetah. There were predators in that cave, more than one, and none of them afraid of men. This wasn't just a random cave, it was a den. And just outside the den, behind several thick bushes, was a pack of hyenas, keeping a watchful eye on the hunter. Approximately 30 feet into the darkness, the cave widened into a chamber roughly 20 feet across. Reinhardt's flashlight beam caught a reflection of amber eyes, the wounded lion backed against the far wall, its massive chest heaving with labored breaths. Blood matted its magnificent black mane. The beast's lips pulled back in a silent snarl, muscles tensed for a final stand. Reinhardt raised his rifle, centering the scope on the lion's chest. His fingers tightened on the trigger. In his excitement, in his focus on the wounded lion, he failed to sweep his light across the rest of the chamber. He failed to notice the low hyena growls emanating from the shadows to his left. He failed to see the other pairs of eyes watching him from recessed areas of the cave. The first hyena struck from his blind spot, 80 pounds of muscle and bone slamming into his side, powerful jaws clamping around his forearm with bone-crushing force. The impact sent his rifle clattering across the stone floor. His scream echoed through the chamber as a second hyena lunged for his legs, teeth shredding through his canvas pants and into the flesh beneath. The commotion triggered the wounded lion's final surge of adrenaline. With a roar that seemed to shake the very walls of the cave, the massive cat launched itself across the chamber. Its enormous paws, each armed with claws like curved daggers, struck Reinhardt's chest with such force that 3 ribs shattered on impact. The lion's jaws closed around the hunter's shoulder and neck, powerful enough to sever his spine with a single bite. Outside the cave, Nikosi heard the horrific sounds of the attack. The initial scream cut short, followed by snarls, growls, and the wet, tearing sounds of feeding predators. An experienced guide, he knew better than to enter the cave alone. He retreated to their vehicle and radioed for emergency assistance. By the time a response team arrived 3 hours later, the sounds from the cave had subsided. Using powerful spotlights and armed with rifles, they entered the chamber. What they found defied easy description. Reinhardt's remains were scattered across the cave floor, limbs separated from his torso, flesh stripped from bone, his expensive hunting gear torn to shreds. Of the lion, they found only blood smears and tufts of black mane. The hyenas too had retreated deeper into the cave system, likely through passages too narrow for humans to follow. But what they left behind was far more terrifying than what they took. The recovery team collected what remained of Reinhardt and his equipment. Among the recovered items was his helmet camera, its casing cracked but its memory card intact. Most of the footage was corrupted, but forensic technicians managed to recover the final frame, a still image captured at the moment before the attack. The image shows the wounded lion in the background, but dominating the foreground, previously hidden in Reinhardt's blind spot, are the reflections of multiple pairs of eyes. Some belonging to hyenas, others unidentifiable, all staring directly into the camera lens. The image now serves as a training tool for professional guides across Africa, a chilling reminder of what awaits those who enter predator territory without proper respect or caution. Victor Reinhardt's death prompted changes to hunting regulations in Namibia, including mandatory waiting periods after wounding dangerous game and prohibitions against entering caves or enclosed spaces when tracking predators. His social media accounts, once filled with triumphant poses over dead animals, now serve as digital memorials. The comment sections transformed into debates about the ethics of trophy hunting. In the remote Kunini region, local guides tell visitors that on certain nights you can hear strange sounds echoing from the cave system. Not quite human, not quite animal. They say it's the spirit of the arrogant hunter, forever trapped in darkness, eternally experiencing his terrifying final affliction at the claws and teeth of creatures he once thought he could conquer. The cave floor told a story soaked in blood. A lion and a pack of hyenas claiming revenge in the most horrifying way imaginable. But the jungle, it doesn't roar, it waits. And for one elite hunter chasing a rare black jaguar, the most dangerous predator wasn't the one she was tracking, it was the one tracking her. The Amazon rainforest holds secrets that have remained undisturbed for millennia. Beneath its dense canopy where sunlight filters through in fragmented beams, life and death play out in ancient, unforgiving rhythms. It's a place where humans are not the apex predator, a reality that Savannah Locke would discover in the most horrific way possible. She thought she was hunting a legend. What she didn't know was that it had already chosen her. At 34, Savannah had built a reputation among the controversial trophy hunters. The walls of her Montana ranch displayed the mounted heads of animals from 6 continents: African elephants, Siberian tigers, polar bears, each representing a victory in her quest to conquer the natural world. But one trophy had eluded her: the rare melanistic jaguar, sometimes called the Black Panther of the Americas. With fewer than 600 estimated to exist, these shadow-colored predators represented the ultimate prize for a hunter seeking notoriety. When rumors reached her of a large male spotted near the Brazil-Peru border, Savannah immediately chartered a private plane to Manaus. On May 12, 2023, she hired Paulo Mendez, a 52-year-old local guide with decades of experience navigating the Amazon's treacherous terrain. Though he had worked with hunters before, Paulo primarily led scientific expeditions and photography tours. He agreed to take Savannah into the jungle, but made it clear he would only track the animal, not participate in the kill. But Paulo wasn't the only one watching Savannah's every move. They ventured deep into the rainforest, traveling first by boat along the winding tributaries of the Amazon River, then on foot through increasingly dense vegetation. Savannah carried her custom bespoke rifle, equipped with a night vision scope and hand-loaded cartridges designed for maximum stopping power. Around her neck hung a high-definition GoPro camera to document her triumph. For 3 days, they followed promising signs: distinctive paw prints in the mud, claw marks on trees, and the remains of a capybara that had been dragged up into the branches, a hunting behavior unique to jaguars. Each sign pushed them further from established trails and deeper into pristine jungle that rarely saw human footprints. By the 4th day, Paulo's demeanor had changed. The signs they were following suggested an animal of unusual size and hunting proficiency. More concerning were the patterns he observed: circular tracks around their previous night's campsite and evidence that the jaguar had backtracked along their own trail. In his experience, this wasn't the behavior of prey being hunted, but of a predator stalking hunters. Little did she know, something wasn't fleeing, it was closing in. That evening, as they set up camp in a small clearing, Paulo urged Savannah to abandon the hunt. The jaguar, he explained, was displaying territorial behavior typically seen only when cubs were nearby or when an animal had previous negative encounters with humans. Either scenario made for an unpredictable and potentially aggressive predator. Savannah dismissed his concerns. She hadn't traveled 4,000 miles and paid $50,000 to return empty-handed. The more dangerous the hunt, the more valuable the trophy, and the more engagement her post would receive. She informed Paulo that she would continue alone if necessary. By morning, her decision was made for her. Paulo had disappeared during the night, taking the satellite phone and emergency medical supplies with him. He had left only a hand-drawn map marking the route back to the river, weighed down with a stone beside her tent. Most people would have recognized this as the final warning it was. Savannah saw it as an opportunity. Now she could claim the trophy entirely as her own achievement without sharing credit with a guide. She packed her essential gear, activated her personal GPS tracker, and continued deeper into the jungle. What Savannah failed to realize was that she had crossed a threshold. In this primal environment, her high-tech weapons and hunting experience meant little against an animal perfectly evolved for this ecosystem over millions of years. The jaguar, the 3rd largest big cat in the world and pound for pound the strongest, can crush a caiman skull with a single bite. Its spotted coat, or in this case black fur with nearly invisible rosettes, renders it practically invisible in dappled jungle light. As Savannah pushed forward, the forest grew denser and darker. The cacophony of birds and monkeys that had accompanied their journey gradually diminished until an unnatural silence enveloped her. Experienced jungle travelers recognize this silence as a warning. The smaller creatures go quiet when a predator is near. She should have turned back then, but silence is only merciful to those who listen. By midday, the humidity had reached oppressive levels. Sweat soaked through Savannah's moisture-wicking shirt as she macheted through the undergrowth. She paused to check her GPS and take a drink from her water bottle. That's when she noticed it, a strange pattern in the foliage about 50 yards ahead. Something dark and sleek moved behind a curtain of leaves, visible for just a fraction of a second before disappearing. Savannah raised her rifle, peering through the scope at the spot where she'd seen movement. Nothing. She lowered the weapon and continued forward, her senses heightened, adrenaline sharpening her focus. She was getting close. She could feel it. What she didn't realize was that she had been close for hours, not to her quarry, but to her executioner. The jaguar had been shadowing her movements since dawn, sometimes from the ground, sometimes from the branches above. Unlike other big cats that chase down prey, jaguars are ambush predators of extraordinary patience. This one had been evaluating her, learning her patterns, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. That evening, Savannah made camp in a small clearing beside a stream. As she secured her tent, heavy raindrops began to fall, quickly intensifying into a tropical downpour. Lightning flashed across the sky, momentarily illuminating the wall of vegetation surrounding her. In those strobing moments of clarity, she could have sworn she saw eyes reflecting back at her from the darkness. Two golden orbs floating in the black void of the jungle. The storm worsened overnight. By morning, the stream had swollen into a rushing torrent, cutting off her planned route. Checking her GPS, Savannah realized she would need to detour several miles to find another crossing point. As she packed up her sodden gear, she noticed something that sent ice through her veins despite the tropical heat. Massive paw prints circling her tent, pressed into the mud sometime during the night. The jaguar had been within feet of her as she slept. For the first time, fear began to erode Savannah's confidence. She decided to abandon the hunt and return to civilization. But the jungle had other plans. The GPS signal weakened under the thick canopy, especially with storm clouds still blocking the sky. The landmarks on Paolo's map were difficult to identify in the altered landscape where the rain had transformed familiar terrain. As afternoon faded toward evening, Savannah realized she was lost. The rain had finally stopped, but darkness would arrive within the hour. She needed to make camp again, a prospect that filled her with dread after discovering the previous night's visitor. She found a small rise of ground near a massive kapok tree, hoping the elevation would provide some security. As she unrolled her sleeping bag, a subtle sound caught her attention. Not a snap or crash, but the gentle patter of water droplets falling in an irregular pattern. Something was moving through the wet foliage above her. Savannah reached for her rifle, but before her fingers could close around the stock, the world exploded into chaos. A massive shadow dropped from the branches 20 feet above, a silent missile of muscle and fury. The jaguar struck her from behind with surgical precision, its powerful jaws clamping around the base of her skull, the killing technique perfected over millennia of evolution. The force of the impact drove Savannah face first into the mud. Her rifle clattered away, useless now. The jaguar's teeth found the vulnerable spot where her spine met her skull, applying pressure with bone-crushing force. In the wild, this technique severs the spinal cord of prey instantly. For Savannah, it meant paralysis but not immediate death. A horrific awareness trapped in a body that could no longer move or fight back. The predator dragged her limp form deeper into the undergrowth, powerful muscles making light work of her 140-pound frame. Following instinctual behavior, the jaguar began covering its kill with leaves and debris, a caching technique that preserves meat and hides it from scavengers. As darkness fell completely, the last thing Savannah saw was the jaguar's golden eyes studying her with cold, alien intelligence before the leaves covered her face. The emergency signal from Savannah's GPS tracker continued transmitting for 3 days before a Brazilian search and rescue team pinpointed the location. What they found was a grim tableau that told the story of her final moments. Her campsite was destroyed, equipment scattered across a wide area. 20 feet up the kapok tree, deep claw marks scored the bark, the jaguar's waiting perch. Near the base of the tree, they discovered her rifle, the scope shattered. 50 yards into the undergrowth, partially buried under leaves and branches, they found what remained of Savannah Loch. The GoPro camera was recovered nearby, its casing cracked but its memory card intact. The footage, later analyzed by Brazilian authorities, captured 42 seconds of her final moments. The video begins with Savannah looking up, alerted by something above. The camera shakes violently as the impact occurs, and for a brief moment the lens captures a glimpse of midnight black fur and a golden eye before the screen goes dark. The Brazilian Environmental Protection Agency closed the area to all hunting expeditions following the incident. Paulo Mendes, who had hiked out to report the dangerous conditions, later told investigators he had recognized signs of a jaguar that local indigenous people called O Fantasma Negro, the Black Ghost, a legendary male known for its unusual size and aggression towards humans who ventured too deep into its territory. Savannah Loch's death sparked intense debate in hunting circles and conservation communities alike. For some, it represented nature's justice against those who kill for trophies. For others, it was simply the inevitable outcome when humans forget their place in the natural order. In the dense Amazon rainforest, where sunlight struggles to reach the forest floor, the black jaguar continues its silent patrol. Its territory remains inviolate, its dominance unchallenged. For in this ancient realm, humans are not the apex predator, merely visitors who sometimes forget they are not immortal until the jungle delivers its terrifying end. Thanks for watching this video. If you love this video, you'll definitely also love the one on your end screen right now. Hope to see you there.